The lineup.
Yeah, buddy.
Are you good with the world?
Good, man.
Something tells me you're into
There's
something.
gonna be a lot of me, Mr. Shermaning your Mr. Peabody on this FCC thing. I feel like
that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of built it that way for us to say, for you to go, well, what about the argument that?
Yeah,
if you want to do that, if you want to take that side,
I'm gonna just do like, but Mr. Peabody,
investment in broadband infrastructure has declined, hasn't it?
My friends on Reddit say.
I'm starting to throw not all of Reddit, but sections of Reddit into the same bucket as 24-hour television news. It's just bad for you. It skews your perspective of what's actually going on and actually makes you less informed.
Well, I guess I've always found big generalizations of Reddit kind of problematic, just because.
It's why I hedged that by saying sections, because there's plenty of Reddit I still enjoy quite a lot.
Sure, yeah. I mean, for me, Reddit is reeling about people bitching about their least favorite wrestler. So, or arguing, people who love Hearthstone talking about how Hearthstone's the worst game that's ever.
But the whole front page of the internet part of it is what I'm referring to.
Well, I mean, but even then, it's like, I mean, I remember the first time I realized that Reddit just kind of had its own motivation. I'll keep this quick because I know we're about to start. Was when Mitt Romney had just gotten the nomination. I had just a goober boyfriend of a friend of mine that was just like, like Mitt Romney's the most conservative candidate who's ever run for president.
Jeez.
And I'm like, and it's like, dude, I read this amazing Reddit thread about it, and I'm like, okay,
yeah. All right, let's do this, shall we? Here we go.
Daily Tech News Show is powered by its audience, not outside organizations. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for Thursday, May 18th, 2017, and it's not gonna stop because I'm here, Tom Merritt, and he's here, Justin Robert Young.
Tom, I believe we've got a lot of we have a righteous quest. I feel
we have a righteous quest. You mean the quest for understanding, for knowledge, for truth?
Indeed. We endeavor to take but a simple sip from the cup of knowledge, from the font of knowledge, and we're gonna do it. You know, there's a lot of misinformation. We're talking about net neutrality. We're talking about the FCC, and what we like to do on this show is just kind of take a pause from a lot of the noise that goes on around things like this that are very important and deserve everybody's passion. And maybe just look at exactly what the facts are.
At least the facts as far as they can be known and what people are saying and what caveats to understand. If you're feeling fear, if you're feeling uncertainty, if you're feeling doubt, we can't help you with much, but we could at least eliminate the part of that that's caused by net neutrality. At least that's our hope on today's episode. But let's start with some things you should know about. Security researcher Adrien Guinet, sorry, Patrick, of Quarks Lab in France has released software called WannaKey that can recover the key needed to decrypt data locked up by the WannaCry ransomware in Windows XP. That's problematic because XP is harder to infect with the ransomware, but still, the poetic part of this is an XP vulnerability. An XP bug means that the prime numbers used to generate WannaCry's secret key sometimes remain intact in the computer's memory until the PC is powered down. So it won't work if you've rebooted, and it may not work for other reasons. But it's an XP vulnerability that helps you recover from an XP vulnerability.
Yo, dog. The European Commission has fined Facebook $122 million for, quote, incorrect or misleading, end quote, information regarding its acquisition of WhatsApp. specifically regarding the ability to match the identity of WhatsApp and Facebook users.
Ouch, slap on the face. Facebook. Starting in 2018, Microsoft will begin offering its cloud services, Azure, Office 365, Dynamics 365, from data centers located in Cape Town and Johannesburg, South Africa. IBM was the first major cloud provider to open data center infrastructure in Africa, but Microsoft's getting there quick. Amazon and Google have yet to do so, and this helps with latency, obviously, with their services there. But it is a developing market and a big win for people in South Africa, particularly, who can take advantage of that.
Android Pay is available in 10 markets and will soon add Brazil, Canada, Russia, Spain, and Taiwan, says Google. There's also new APIs for merchants with loyalty programs available.
Yes, indeed, you do. Those Google I/O announcements are still trickling out. We got more top stories to talk about, though, as we are going to discuss in depth. The US FCC voted 2-1 in favor of a notice of proposed rulemaking that would eliminate the Title II classification of ISPs and seek comment on what, if anything, should replace the existing open internet guidelines that rely on Title II classification as their justification. The FCC plans to take comments until August 16th, so those headlines that you read about net neutrality is over, it's not yet over. They're taking comments until August 16th. Pai said the FCC, quote, will not rely on hyperbolic statements about the end of the internet as we know it and 140-character argle-bargle, but rather on the data. I really only included this quote because he said argle-bargle. Pai claims that net neutrality rules lower investment in broadband. There's some dispute about that, and we're going to talk about it.
Twitter updated its privacy policy to increase the time it stores users off Twitter web browsing from 10 to 30 days. Twitter added a section in its settings to show details about what information the company uses for ad tracking and lets users deselect specific categories used to serve ads. The policy change also removes support for Do Not Track. The new privacy policy takes effect on June 18th.
I think Do Not Track was just so much argle-bargle myself.
Lord, you and argle-bargle, you've immediately fallen in love with argle-bargle, haven't you?
Yeah, there's been too much argle-bargle out there on the Twitters.
Everybody go ahead and pay the over on 3.5 on argle-bargle.
Hey, Twitter, yeah, I don't want you to keep my data for longer necessarily, but 30 days is still pretty short, relatively speaking, and giving me a clear way to go in and uncheck things and some control is a good move. So it feels like house cleaning, where they're like, hey, we're changing some things up, and to do so, we have to change our policy, but we're doing our best to make it clear to you what we're doing, giving you plenty of time to react to that, and even giving you some more fine-tuned controls over that data.
So this is really about Twitter has not been able to keep pace with its contemporaries in Facebook and Google in terms of selling ads. You know, that's how they make money. It is how social networks have proven themselves to become money, is highly targeted, very specific ads. They want to get better at it. This is a step in that direction. But, you know, it is kind of fascinating how much that they've pushed those embeds and how that has become yet another way to track you all the way across the internet.
Yeah, I mean, track you, but also monetize you, right? I mean, the reason these companies track you is to sell the ads. And it's a big advantage that Facebook has. It's also one of the privacy problems that Facebook has. So Twitter giving you a very clear way to turn that off. In fact, T2T2 says in the chat room that track where you see Twitter content across the web is completely disabled for EU users. So you may be living in a place where that's just not even an option for them to do anyway. But yeah, they were very early to rely on Do Not Track, and Do Not Track has just never caught on. It was voluntary in the first place. Not enough browsers supported it. Not enough advertisers respected it. And so that's dead. And so, yeah, the main reason they're changing things, you're right, Justin, is to take better advantage of the data that they do collect. But there's also them trying to clean up from the failure of Do Not Track to be their way to respect your privacy.
Yeah. Oops. We couldn't figure out how to respect your privacy. Don't worry, do better next time.
Google announced the first major software update for Daydream VR, codenamed Euphrates. It'll come to phones later this year. And by phones, I think there's 2 phones that support Daydream VR, but okay. Among the improvements, there's more than 2. I know. Don't send me the email. Among the improvements will be a 2D panel available in virtual environments to give access to Android functions. Update also adds the ability to cast your screen to a Chromecast so people can see what you're seeing in VR up on the television. There'll also be a version of Chrome adapted for VR. So this isn't VR in Chrome, which also exists. Don't get confused. This is you're in VR and you want to look at a web page. Boom, Chrome can pop up without you leaving the rest of the VR experience. Separately from the Daydream updates, Google also is adding augmented reality features to Chrome for phones that support Tango. And that is 2 phones as of this summer.
There is, and that's funny, Tango, 2 phones. Google certainly made a waves in the VR community yesterday with their announcement of the new phoneless Daydream project. I think Google has a real ability to kind of step in and be a major player in this space, especially when it comes to buying another device. If there's some really interesting rendering software that they announced yesterday at I/O, and if they can grab a foothold on a field that has been demonstrated to be real, and it certainly could be something that could be a revenue generator and yet doesn't have a tremendous amount of direction, I think that's very, very rich, fertile soil for them.
Yeah, and the idea of these standalone headsets, I think, is we had to move through it pretty fast yesterday, but I think it's really intriguing because these are going to be low-cost VR that are immersive. They'll take what they learned from the Daydream project that used phones and be able to make a more immersive version of that. It doesn't require outside sensors. So while it won't be as good as an HTC Vive, HTC is going to be making one of these things. Yeah. And that's what a lot of these features are meant for. If I don't have a phone, I'm just using a standalone VR, I'm going to want to use that browser maybe to check some notifications, et cetera, et cetera.
And you don't need a PC, and you don't need to be tethered. There's a lot there. What you're going to give up is the really tremendous graphics. But to be fair, I've said since the beginning with HTC, as a Vive owner, that I'm fine for lower fidelity adventures that allow me to be immersed in it. Give me an 8-bit world that I am a part of.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with it. I can suspend disbelief that this is the world around me, as long as I have the freedom of movement, which is why I never really liked the Oculus or stuff that is designed, PSVR, that is designed for you to just sit in one place and maybe stand up or maybe sit down or
but you're tethered by cables and all that argle-bargle around you.
You and the argle-bargle. Qualcomm said Thursday that it had demonstrated a system to charge electric vehicles wirelessly while driving. The test took place in Versailles using 2 Renault Kangoo cars driving overpads embedded in the road. Charge was transferred up to 20 kilowatts at highway speed.
Okay, granted. You when we did our prep on your Twitch channel earlier today, you pointed out, like, here we go again, another like promising technology that we'll never see. But the fact that it's got Qualcomm behind it makes me a little more hopeful that we see something like this actually hit the highway. And the other part is, charging our electric cars from the road is not something that has to be built into every single road, right? That's one objection that you can think of, which is like, yeah, but now we're gonna have to tear up all the roads. All it does is extend your range. It says, well, if there's some main highways that we put it in, then that's going to help your electric car by charging it up a little bit more, so you don't have to you can spend longer on the road without having to go plug it in and charge it up. And I think that could be very advantageous for self-driving cars.
Yes. There's no doubt that this is more interesting than I initially thought it was. When I have a tendency to look at some of these things and just say, the conversation that we have internally is this a science experiment? Because if this is a science experiment, I'm not really all that excited in it.
So what would you call that? If it's just something useless, that
like vaporware.
It's just a bunch of.
Oh, I'm not doing it. I'm not getting into your weird cult. This is something that I think could be interesting going forward. It is always going to be hampered by the fact that you are creating great technology that would have to be folded into a public works project if you're going to put it into publicly owned roads. But it is kind of a very exciting thing, because how to charge a battery, keep a battery charged, especially for long distances, is something that's very exciting. I will say that you will probably have to fight an uphill battle to close highways or reroute traffic to put this kind of stuff in. But who knows? I mean, in 10, 20 years, who knows exactly how.
I mean, you have to repave highways. You have to do it all the time. If and again, I don't know how this has to be installed, but if it can just be done as part of normal highway maintenance, then that kind of takes that away. And Qualcomm is trying everything to figure out how to get into the automotive market. They want to sell the chips that will run this. They're in the middle of a takeover of NXP Semiconductors if they can get the approval for it. That's supposed to come by June 9th. So they have a vested interest in making this kind of thing work if they can at all. Stephen Frank, the founder of a company called Panic that makes the Coda and Transmit software. Coda does web editing. Transmit is a file transfer app. Posted that source code for several of Panic's apps has been stolen from Mr. Frank's laptop. Frank downloaded a copy of Handbrake. And if you've been following the news on Daily Tech News Show and Daily Tech Headlines, you know Handbrake was hacked between May 2nd and May 6th. There was a version that had malware built in. If you didn't do the checksum, well, Frank said he launched Handbrake not only without doing the checksum, but, quote, without stopping to wonder why Handbrake would need admin privileges when it hadn't before. And that was that. My Mac was entirely compromised in 3 seconds or less. Panic received an email showing some of the files and asking for money. Of course, they say they're not going to pay it. The FBI is investigating. But man, my heart goes out to Stephen Frank, because yes, it is easy to shake your finger and go, that's what you get when you're not careful. But I know that feeling of a dialog box popping up and being so busy. They're like, oh yeah, I'm sure it's fine. And if you let yourself do that, and all of us are going to be tempted to do that.
Oh yeah. I mean, listen, there's a box. You click the box.
I don't got time for that. I don't got time. Boxes popping up all the time, right?
I know. Listen, for everybody tut-tutting, we have all been Stephen Frank, and we will all be Stephen Frank again.
There, but for the grace of God.
Both of those programs I know are top notch. I use Transmit as my go-to file transfer application, and I know Coda. So many of the best websites that I've been to or built by friends were built on Coda. He is one of the good ones, especially for Mac app development. It is a shame, but also a cautionary tale to always double check. Number one, always listen to Daily Tech News Show so you know that these things are out there. And number two, just slow your roll. If you can slow yourself down in that moment by thinking of Stephen Frank, then he has done his job.
I mean, if you download this on May 2nd, that hacked version hasn't been discovered and publicized yet. So you're just relying on your own best practices. And it's hard in this world of so many updates, so many installations, to be good every single time. I totally understand. The other side of this is, Stephen Frank's working with Apple to make sure that malicious versions of his software don't get submitted to the Mac App Store. And Apple has a pretty good handle on that sort of thing, but that's one of the things he's worried about on the open web. If you're not going through the App Store, make sure if you download a version of Coda and Transmit that you're getting it from Panic and not some third-party version of it that could be hacked. Although my reaction when I read this was like, well, maybe open source them, because then you've got a whole system that can prevent that. Starting an open source project is no simple thing. I get that.
Sure. Or also, just make sure that you are buying Coda and Transmit from Stephen Frank if you are getting it on the open web, and from the Mac App Store if you are going through that channel. And if you download it off another site, know that you might be riding dirty.
Folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines in about 5 minutes, you got to subscribe to Daily Tech Headlines, our other show. It's short, keeps you up to date. If you miss a Daily Tech News Show, it's okay. You stay up to date in less than 5 minutes. Go to dailytechheadlines.com to subscribe to the podcast. You can go to Anchor's app anchor.fm and get a version of it there that you can even call in with responses to. We had a call in the Anchor version today, or you can get it on your Amazon Echo as a flash briefing. And that's a look at the top stories. All right, folks. There is a lot going on around this net neutrality. Pi said he's not going to rely on argle-bargle. We're very clear on that at this point. Current rules that the FCC operates under were approved in February 2015. They reclassified net neutrality. I'm sorry, they reclassified internet service providers as Title II common carriers. An older classification, but it solved the legal basis for enforcing net neutrality. They basically said all bits are equal and you're a common carrier. We're forbearing all of the stuff that doesn't apply to you that involves telephones, but we are now on sound legal basis to say you can't prioritize some traffic over others. You have to make your best effort to deliver stuff. That's a way oversimplification, but that's essentially what it was. Now, Ajay Pai says this has got to change for several reasons. One, there was no need to change the rules. He says the internet was working fine before 2015. There was no evidence we needed this. Two, rules have lowered investment in broadband networks. Pai says companies aren't spending as much on broadband now because of all of these regulations. Regulatory burdens on the ISPs just make it hard to do business in general. All of the new regulations and paperwork. It has raised the possibility of rate regulation because under Title II, the FCC can put price controls in place, and nobody wants to get rid of the rules. Pai says we're fine with net neutrality. We just want to have it on a different legal footing that isn't so burdensome. Now, that all sounds perfectly reasonable, doesn't it, Justin?
No, Tom, it doesn't. I have many friends, and they are all on Twitter, and they are telling me that net neutrality has died today, and Obama's perfect world of neutral internet has now been demolished piece by piece by the villain Ajit Pai.
Wow. That sounds like I might want to call argle-bargle on that. So let's go through starting with the evidence for changing rules, because there is a lot going on both sides of this. The internet's not going to die. The net neutrality rules aren't even changing today. As I mentioned earlier, you've got until August to tell the FCC what you think about these rules. And then in August is when they actually vote on changing the rules. And even then, if you remember the last time around, it takes a while before the rules actually go into place because they have to publish them and all this sort of thing. So there was no need to change the rules. The internet was working fine. Well, guess what? That argument works both ways.
Yes.
The internet's also working fine right now. You can make exactly the same argument, Justin.
Well, sure, you could. The internet seems like it's working okay.
He said we weren't living in a digital dystopia. We're also now not currently living in a digital dystopia.
I don't know, though, Tom. I remember when Tom Wheeler, who everybody always loved as the savior of open internet, made those heroic common carrier rulings that immediately made the internet better for everyone forever. That was what I was promised.
There's some evidence of net neutrality violations. Freepress.net has a whole list of them. If you look at them close, they're all pretty much edge cases. Most of them are mobile. Yes, the net neutrality rules now make all of those cases that Free Press mentions inviolable. There's something that you can complain about, but they really weren't the kinds of things that made it difficult to do the internet. There's one that I will tell you that has changed. And I think personally that the reason Ajit Pai wants to change this is because he is under pressure from the telecoms to do it for this reason. I think this is their big beef, which is why you have Verizon out there going, we don't want to change the net neutrality rules. We want to respect all the bits. We just want to this is the thing, is that interconnection disputes, which are often confused with net neutrality violations, but they're different. That's where Netflix on the back end wants to send their bits into Comcast, and Comcast says, well, we want to charge you because it's an interconnection. Or better yet, forget Netflix, Cogent, Level 3, these backbone providers who historically peer with each other, say, look, we should just come to an agreement. And the ISPs who have a lock on the customers say, well, we're going to charge you. Under the current Title II classifications, complaints can be filed in those cases. So if Netflix is using Cogent to send their internet to me, and suddenly I find out that Netflix is not working for me as a Comcast customer, and I find out that Comcast is refusing to upgrade the connections to Cogent, and that's why, I can complain to the FCC. The FCC can come to Comcast and say, you have to prove why this is happening.
Gotcha.
Right? Ever since these Title II classifications went into place, those interconnection disputes have magically been resolved. And
because nobody wants to get their name on the FCC's list.
Exactly. And the ISPs are magically not making extra money, which they were trying to do with Cogent and Level 3 and et cetera. In fact, Cogent struck a deal with Verizon, said it did not have to pay for interconnection. Level 3 signed new deals with Verizon and AT&T. We don't know how much, but we can guess they probably don't have to pay as much because of those complaints. So I feel like this is the linchpin here. And this is important to understand. They're not changing this to benefit you or anyone else. They're changing this to benefit the telcos because the telcos want to be able to charge backbone providers to get in their networks. That's my opinion anyway.
And this is a key if you are looking at the business model of a lot of these major players, because as Comcast has continued to buy NBC Universal and all of these telecoms are starting to beef up or are being bought by other companies, the idea of being a dumb pipe is something that they are all realizing that they want to be as profitable as possible. Like this for them, that's why they are going to want to push this, is because they got to maximize every dime out of this investment into the running internet to people.
Now, Stoic Squirrel says it's a bit more complicated when it comes to backbone interconnectivity, and it certainly is. But the fact of the matter is that disputes definitely got resolved when suddenly you could complain. And there's a lot more complexity. He also says, what about Google and Facebook? What about Google and Facebook? They already pay to get on the internet. And yes, other companies would like them to pay twice, but this really doesn't affect Google and Facebook. This isn't about Google and Facebook. This is, if anything, it's more about Netflix and Hulu, who, by the way, happen to provide services that some people use as alternatives to television services provided by Comcast and other ISPs.
Wait a minute, though, Tom. I think that this is a good or bad ruling because of Ajit Pai's statement that people aren't putting money into bringing the internet to the people.
All right, yeah, let's look at this. Pai says among our nation's 12 largest internet service providers, domestic broadband capital expenditures decreased by 5.6% or $3.6 billion between 2014 and 2016. The biggest reason for that is that AT&T said in November 2012, before Title II was even on the table, that it was going to increase investment in wireless and wireline until 2015, and then bring that amount back after 2015. So they said ahead of time they were going to cut it in 2015. The fact that they did accounts for most of the decline that Pai identifies, because AT&T accounts for about a third of the industry investment. If you look at the other companies, Altice reaffirmed plans to deploy fiber to the home in 2016, told investors it remained focused on upgrading networks. Comcast increased capital investment by 10.2% in Q1 2017, spent $7.6 billion on its cable segment. From 2015 to 2016, Charter's pro forma capital investments topped $14.5 billion. That's a 15% increase. Verizon's total two-year post-vote capital expenditure was 3.1% higher than they were in the 2 years preceding the vote. And here's the biggest one for me that says this is a non-issue. Companies are required by law to give investors accurate info on risk factors. You have to tell your investors this is going to impede our investment. None of them, no ISP, told investors that Title II was a risk factor. And if they mentioned Title II at all, they mentioned it in order to allay investors' concerns and say it would have no material effect on their ability to invest.
So you're telling me, Tom, that that's a bit of a red herring by Mr. Pai?
It is. It is entirely a red herring. I'm not saying net neutrality has helped investment, but it has had, if anything, you could say it's had no effect.
At least in the circle of time in which he circled to be the most conservative on it.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at this AT&T thing, it was something they were going to do anyway. They had already talked about it before Title II came around, and by law, they all have to tell them. So yeah, It doesn't look like this had an effect.
So wait a minute, Tom. Sure, this seems to be a complicated issue with a lot more factors and a little bit of, indeed chicanery from the acting FCC director. But if this hasn't killed the internet overnight, then why am I sweating like a hooker in church?
I'm not sure how to answer that, actually. What are you getting at?
What's going to happen going forward?
Okay.
Make it feel better.
Well, we've got a few more points I want to hit real quickly. The argument that there are imposed regulatory burdens on ISPs is true. There have been transparency requirements that have not been taken away for ISPs over 250,000. There has been a perceived prohibition of fast lanes and tiers that companies wanted to use, and there's a lot more paperwork. So that part's true. The possibility of rate regulation, there's been no rate regulation. Okay. Title II regime lets customers file complaints that ISPs are charging unjust or unreasonable rates. So rate regulation could be imposed. So that one cuts both ways. You can say, well, there hasn't been any, but Ajit Pai can say, yeah, but what's to prevent some future commissioner from changing that?
We should not be in the business of regulating the rates.
And that is not part of the law. Wheeler didn't do it, but there's nothing stopping another commissioner from doing it. And if they roll these back, then the Federal Trade Commission can take over hearing complaints about unfair or deceptive practices. And you could see where that would actually be a better way for customers to complain than the current system with the FCC. Rates and practices need to be just and reasonable. Now, ISPs are claiming that's too vague. However, as Wheeler pointed out, there's a long history of adjudication and rulemaking on what just and reasonable means. So it's not very vague, really.
So the argument here would be these, even if we are going to get into an argument on whether or not things are unjust or unreasonable, that the FTC should be hearing this instead of the FCC.
That is one argument, is that the FTC could do a better job about that for consumers, which arguably it could. In the end, though, my opinion, Justin, to give you some hope, is that, first of all, nothing changed much when these were put in place, except for those interconnection agreements. That seems to be the biggest shift in how things are done. So you might expect, if these rules are changed back, that you'll have more problems with your video streaming if your video streaming service of choice hasn't struck a deal with the ISPs. But mostly, it's not going to increase the number of people providing internet. It's not going to suddenly unleash a ton of investment. The big problem for consumers is they have a lack of choice to force competitors to give them better options for the internet, at least in many cases. It's getting better in some areas of the US, but not in all areas. And the FCC hasn't and isn't doing anything to help that. Where it has been helped on its own without any FCC involvement. What actually should happen, because there really is no legal basis for this. The Title II thing has to use a very old law and then get rid of tons of it to work. Before that, they tried to use this other Section 736, and then that didn't hold up in court. There should be a new law. And the Restoring Internet Freedom Act has been proposed. It would prohibit the FCC from classifying ISPs as Title II. It really wouldn't do anything to resolve this, though. It would just stop the FCC from doing something. What is a better plan, in my opinion, is U.S. Senator John Thune of South Dakota, who is a chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee, wrote a Ars Technica op-ed piece saying, let's ban blocking, throttling, and paid prioritization of internet traffic at the congressional level. Let's just make a new law that says you can't do this.
So effectively, instead of trying to do this through the FCC, just say internet has become such an indispensable element of our lives that we just need to make federal
regulation. The FCC would still enforce that, right?
Yeah.
The FCC's job is to enforce Congress's laws. The problem is they've got a 1996 and a 1934 law they're trying to apply to 2017 internet.
And so maybe there just needs to be, at the very least, a new definition of exactly what the lay of the land is for our communications.
Yes. And if I were Ajit Pai, that's what I would be trying to do. I would be trying to get the authority, or to get someone to have the authority to make it easier for ISPs to enter the market so that we can have more competition, instead of throwing up roadblocks and taking away other roadblocks and rearranging the deck chairs. And that would actually, in my opinion, probably actually help consumers. But my thoughts, none of this is going to help consumers. None of it helped consumers before, and none of it's going to help consumers now.
I don't know, Tom. Sounds like a lot of argle-bargle to me.
I win! Hey, thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. A couple messages before we get out of here. I'm going to have you read the second one, Justin. I'll read this first one. Tom and Patrick discussed real-world issues regarding using bulk patient data to cure disease. Most follow from a perceived patient fear that their data could be misused. I offer a provocative perspective informed by a DRM analogy. I suggest we are suffering from a delusion about data ownership. You do not actually own the true facts about you, and you don't get to tightly control how available information about you gets used. You do have a right to object to being harmed by abuse and to expect folks acting maliciously against you to be punished, but those protections can be implemented one abstraction away in terms of rules about outcomes rather than practices. And then he goes on to compare it to Dr. M, DRM, the Dr. M character that we created on Buzz Out Loud back on the day. Whether technical, legal, or contractual data restrictions and rights management mechanisms are clumsy and of lower value than people expect. As a UK citizen, if I go to my public and communally owned and funded National Health Service and give it medical data hoping it can help me, my expectation is that the data should be freely used for the good of all. If harmful abuses were to occur, certainly I expect them to be battled, but the checkbox on reuse is ticked by default.
And Matt, a.k.a. Waffleophagus, my boy, writes in, hey, DTNS crew, so the auto-sharing feature on Google Photos looks rad, but isn't it just using Google Plus to make the calculations on saying, quote, do you want to send this photo to Justin, end quote? Because if that's the case, will it ever see use since Google Plus is rarely used? Thoughts?
I actually responded to Waffleophagus directly on this. It is my understanding that while Google Plus is one of the vectors that it can get information from, it's not the only one. For instance, I went into Google Photos yesterday and it showed me pictures of all the people it could identify, but it doesn't know their names. And so it showed me a picture of my wife, Eileen, and it said, who is this? And I was like, oh, that's Eileen. And so I named her. And I could have chosen to associate it with my contact list, at which point then it would be able to suggest like, hey, you should share these photos with Eileen. But because of the way machine learning works, it doesn't even have to know their name. It can just suggest like, hey, you should share it with this person. Who are they? And then you tell them.
Yeah. So you don't necessarily need Google Plus.
Yeah. So if Google Plus dies tomorrow, this would still work. It all happens in the app. Why does it say thank Roger Chang? Is Roger trying to tell us something?
I don't know. I was wondering why Roger.
We should thank Roger for all the hard work he does producing the show, though. It's totally fair.
Roger Chang, everybody, go ahead and thank your local Roger Chang.
Oh wait, Roger has just changed it to thank Justin Robert Young. Justin Robert Young, thank you so much. What do you got going on to tell folks about?
Justin Roger Chang is what I'm going to go about on out. Folks, you can go ahead and follow me at Twitch TV /twitch.tv/Justin R. Young. Also, politics, if you're into that, and the Jury podcasts, and Night Attack, of course, the long-running comedy series featuring Brian Brushwood and myself. You can now subscribe to that on Twitch if you are so inclined. So go ahead and check that out.
Hey, thanks everybody who gives a little value back to this show for the value they get. That's the model we work on. We hope you like what you get, and we hope you can assign a value. That includes Ryan Orman, Chris Dry, Jason Collins, all of whom are among the people who got my latest column on how to fix the internet at patreon.com/DTNS. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 20:30 UTC at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. We're at facebook.com/dailytechnewsshow, where I just started a new Facebook group. Go check that out. And our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow with Annie Gauss and Len Peralta. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
A little longer show than usual, but that's what happens when you get me talking net neutrality.
Yeah.
And all that argle-bargle.
Oh, that argle-bargle.
You made my day. when you said
Bargling.
it.
Every day I'm bargling.
Also, warms my heart all the thank yous to Roger in the chat room right now. That's awesome.
Thank you. Wait, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I don't know. That was a brain fart. I can honestly say I don't know why I typed that in there. I just, might
Just
be
look at
like
the thanks, man. It's okay. It's all right.
It's all right.
You deserve it.
Maybe my subconscious is slowly breaking through. Is it your id? Your id? I think that is. Maybe it's because I just watched Arrival last night. Finally watched that movie.
Oh wow.
I know, right? It's taken so long. I really liked it.
No, it's an exceptional movie, and I wound up getting into a conversation about it in a bar of all places, and it's hard to kind of translate into a explaining the plot of it to somebody who has not seen it yet is asking you to spoil the entire plot. Like
it's
really good. It made me want to see it again. Like just talking about how rad of a plot it is.
Jeremy Renner in that movie, I just kept feeling like at some point he would pull out a bow and arrow and just start shooting at things to get something done. So with titles, we have Too Much Argle Bargle, followed by The Cult of Argle Bargle. The company is called Panic. They were overdue. Oops, we couldn't figure out how to respect your privacy. If it ain't a dystopia, don't fix it.
I like that one too.
FCC stirs up red herring pie. I guess. Oops, we couldn't figure out how to protect your privacy again. Always listen to DTNS. We are all Stephen Frank. Thank Roger. Don't sell your admin privileges. I might want to call Argle Bargle. Who says that anyway? It's like a 60-year-old British guy. It's like a generational phrase.
Well, the Scots have their own version, Argyle Bargle.
Argyle Bargle. Stop it. The well-dressed Scottish thieves, Argyle burglars.
Argyle burglars.
Too much Argle Bargle still at the top.
I mean, Tom, that's your call on how all in you want to go on Argle Bargle. I feel like you are enchanted by Argle Bargle.
I just thought it was hilarious that he used that.
Yeah, I think it's a generation, because that to me that just sounds like an old guy.
I like Bargle. If it ain't a dystopia, don't fix it. Actually, that's my favorite.
I do like the internet is getting FCC'd, even though it's a little leading. All titles lead, right?
Yeah.
Here, I'll click on it. See it? It moved up from KV87.
What
do you like, Justin?
I like the Argle Bargle one. I mean, it's so funny.
Which Argle Bargle one do you like?
One that was up top. Let me.
Too much Argle Bargle.
Too much Argle Bargle. Although there needs to be a dash if you want to get the right Argle Bargle.
All right. Well, I'm gonna do what I did the other day. I'm gonna go ahead and export with a temporary title, and then I can change it in the ID3 tags after export. Give you a few more minutes to vote. You've heard our all three of our favorites here. So go and vote at showbot.tv if you're watching live. I mean, you can go vote at Showbot TV if you're not watching live, but it won't be on these titles. It'll be on somebody else's show's titles.
Google I/O still going on, or is this just?
No, we're into day 2 now, which is all the panels. There's no more
the breakout sessions, and all that kind of stuff. The stuff that people actually go there for, and not
right. So those couple of like the Daydream VR thing that came out of one of the panels there.
It seems like this has been a good I/O for Google.
I felt pretty solid. Yeah. Like nothing earth shattering, but everything they announced felt like it was motivated and useful. And their main theme was like, we're an AI first company now, not a mobile first company. And they're getting ahead of that. And it feels like they actually are.
Yeah. I mean, I always find Google is at its best and its most focused when it's iterating. Like I think Google is great when it moves 1 inch. Whenever they try to move 1 mile, they tend to be off in the wilderness somewhere, and they just have to suck up their pride and kind of come back.
I think it was on the Verge live blog, and I wish I could remember who said it, whether it was Casey Newton or someone else, but like partway through, like an hour in, they said, we're an hour in and not a single new messaging app has been launched.
Yeah. I think that's, that they do so many things well. Although I'll tell you what, do you want to get a little bit more into your the extended YouTube rant that we were having earlier today?
Oh yeah, sure. Why not? Because that's the one area in the IO announcement where I didn't think they spent my time well. The one thing I'm usually complaining about in these keynotes is like, you're wasting my time. I'm sitting here not able to do anything else because I'm watching your announcement and you're not telling me anything worth listening to. And that was not true. Most of IO, they were moving it fast. They were giving useful and valuable information till YouTube. And then the YouTube bit was just like, it got me excited when they were like live streaming. I'm like, oh, what cool new live streaming tech you got? Come on, let's do this. And then it was Super Chat.
Super Chat. Hey, by the way, we have a garbage chat for live streams, and now there's a super version of it.
I would certainly be more excited if I turned chat on during our YouTube live stream. I get that, but it's not about that. Super Chat's fine. I don't think Super Chat is a problem, but Super Chat as your leading item at IO felt like at best underwhelming.
So I think if we're going to take the meta argument on where is YouTube now, where does YouTube want to go? Ultimately, without a question, it is one of the biggest, most important cultural forces in technology. Of the idea that it is watched as much as it is.
Oh, hold on. I got to pick the show title. Oh, look what went to the top.
What went to the top?
Thank Roger.
Aww.
What went to the? Oh, that's cool. I would say use it, but then I don't think people would understand the episode.
Well, I'm using it anyway. So
oh my God.
Awesome.
We're gonna thank Roger. See, and all it took was for you to write for us to say that.
For your subconscious to take over.
All I had to do was take over the teleprompter.
All right. So I'm sorry. Right, we had
a bag of
breaking news there.
Bag of fake news. So as the question is, where is YouTube now? Where's it going? It's not an incredible cultural force. It is certainly, remained at scale a very the most reliable place to upload and stream your videos. And yet there seems to be this kind of internal tempest of well, do we want to go headlong into live streaming like what Twitch does and what Facebook has really pushed, or do we want to, are we the new cable for an entire generation? How do we want people to consume the content that they like? Are we creating a list for them, or is there an easy kind of RSS style, just list of things that they've subscribed to? There's just kind of all these little undefinables for you.
I would love to know what that company's mission statement is, because it really would.
It's learn, connect, create. Oh wait, no, that's the YouTube Spaces mission statement. Never mind.
I think part of it is they need a firm idea of the direction they want to go. I don't know. I don't know enough of those people to get a sense of what they want to accomplish. Do they want to be the platform, a platform? Do they want to replicate what's been done on cable TV, where they are a platform, but they also generate their own original content? There's so many ways to do it. I think Twitch is reaping the fruits of being very focused on what they want to be.
I'll be honest. I think YouTube does know who they are, but the fact that you don't know that is
Yeah.
the problem.
Is the problem.
But that could very well. I mean, that could be.
I really do. I think YouTube is Yahoo circa 2007.
Ah, here we go. Now let's rustle your neck beard, because here comes Tom's historical knowledge. Go.
Well, in 2007, Yahoo was big. It was being used by everyone. It was number one in traffic. And yet it was stagnant. It hadn't done a lot. And a lot of people said, well, it doesn't need to do a lot. It's Yahoo. It's great. Everybody uses it.
It'll be here forever.
10 years later, they never fixed that. And, you know, there was the famous peanut butter spread too thin memo and all of that. I think Yahoo's problems are different than YouTube. I don't know that their peanut butter is necessarily spread too thin. But what I see with YouTube is they're not doing anything different. They're incredibly successful at being a place for people to become creators of video, gather a rabid audience, and make money. And yes, many creators complain about that. I feel like that is just a signal of how good they are at it, that they have a significant number of people who complain about how they do it. That's you know, the movie studio, the TV industry, they've always had creators complaining about that. I think they're very good at that, but I don't know what else they are. And maybe they're fine with that. Maybe that they just want to be that, but it doesn't seem like it. They launch YouTube TV. They launch YouTube Originals. They launch YouTube Red. And none of that seems to really move YouTube forward in a logical way that I say, oh, okay, that is a natural, you know, growth for YouTube. Even the most recent YouTube design, I barely can tell happened because they haven't changed things. And I have a hard time finding new things on YouTube. You know, when they have a new promotion, when they're streaming live at Coachella, why don't I see that? Like, there's just no change. It feels very stagnant.
Then there's also this. Is YouTube profitable?
Yes. I mean, it depends on how you account for it, but honestly, it's plenty profitable. They make enough money to justify themselves. That's one thing Susan Wojcicki has done well, is she's come in and sort of battened down the hatches. They were bringing in tons of money, but they weren't quite sure where it was all going, and they didn't have a stable relationship with advertisers. That stable relationship with advertisers obviously is being affected by the overall Google problem of, you know, being so dominant in the ad space that they're getting people pulling their ads because they don't want to buy extremist videos and this and that. Yeah. But I don't think YouTube's profitability is their main issue.
Oh, no. I don't think it is their main issue. I think that even if it was a write-off for Google to own media for an entire demographic, is it an investment well worth it? No matter where it goes. This is a story from October 18, 2016, that we are still in investment mode, Wojcicki said at Fortune Most Powerful Women Summit in California. She explained further that the declining TV viewership in people 18 to 34 represents a massive opportunity, which brought in 1.6 billion, or sorry, Google bought it for 1.6 billion in 2006. By the way, oh my God, what a steal, right?
Yeah.
YouTube for 1.6 billion. Jesus. Pull the trigger on that one every day and twice on Sunday, even in 2006. But she said there is no timetable for profitability, which doesn't mean that YouTube isn't profitable. It means it's not a focus at the moment.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was trying to say is they're not worried about how much money it's making. It's making plenty of money, but they're plowing a bunch of that money back into stuff like YouTube Red, all of that. I think they could turn on a dime and make it profitable any moment.
Sure. I mean, and that was one of the big knocks on Amazon, right? Was that Amazon take in enough profit, that they're doing too much of their investing in the future, take more profit, and no, not the worst thing in the
also world. I've heard a couple of people make the argument that a lot of Google's ad sales benefit from being able to throw YouTube into the package. And so that's kind of an unwritten benefit there.
Oh, that it's a value add for larger ad packages and stuff.
I don't know if it's technically a value add which implies that it doesn't cost him anything. But yeah, it's that, you can reach this part of the audience as well. We'll get someone to sign a deal that benefits Google mostly, but maybe they wouldn't have signed the deal or as big a deal otherwise.
Yeah, I agree with you that I am not sure what my relationship with the YouTube site is, because I do upload videos there nearly every day.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that is, not hard, but not exactly intuitive.
Yeah.
I watch videos while my videos are uploading every day on channels that I subscribe to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also something that is constantly in flux as YouTube decides what videos I'd really like that are ahead of the ones that I've subscribed to in the easiest way. So and it's also not like, oh, well, hey, you like all these, videos of Jim Cornette talking about WWE Raw last night. Do you know that you could also just watch WWE Raw right now?
Exactly.
It's live right now. You just sign up for YouTube to be your thing. You can download it on all your devices, and now it's cool. So it's like, even when it's trying to tell me things I would like, it's not really giving me reasons. It's just saying, hey, TV, YouTube, right? ? Or, hey, commercials, YouTube Red, right? And I'm like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm getting. And you're not even just letting me watch the things that I subscribe to.
Yeah. No, the YouTube Red is the biggest example of what I'm talking about. They have an incredibly good service there. Remove the commercials from YouTube and get free music service and get access to exclusive content that you can't watch otherwise, that is highly produced. Totally worth it to large parts of their audience. And everyone looks at it as a waste because they have not done a good job explaining it to people and making it clear all of the things that you get with it. Offline viewing, all of that stuff.
Because that's the other thing is, and I don't know what the YouTube TV service is. I haven't really played around with it, but I think that there is an idea that, when I watch, all of this is going to involve me watching wrestling because it might be the only.
Sure,
thing.
No, that's fair.
It's wrestling and prestige television is literally the only thing that I watch.
Well, YouTube TV has nothing to do with YouTube except that it's called YouTube TV, and it has one part of its on-demand area that has YouTube videos in it.
And that's the thing is, it's like, why isn't that fully integrated? Why, if I watch Monday Night Raw, that the next thing that plays isn't what's on USA, but rather other videos that it already knows that I like? It
will do that. It will add those to your coming up next if you're watching on demand. But I mean, honestly, they should have a YouTube TV channel that has all their originals that I can just pop into and go, well, what is this? They don't do that.
I mean, they of all people, everybody, the two people that I think need to really, really, really get into becoming a cord cutting carrier is YouTube and Twitter. YouTube and Twitter to me are if they were at their best, I would subscribe to both of them. I would double pay for internet. So on YouTube, I could watch all my live stuff and I could just get better, relevant, bite-sized content, right? And on Twitter, when everybody's talking about a thing, I just want to click a button and watch the thing that everybody's talking about.
And it's the same thing, right? When there's something big on Twitter, sometimes it's really hard to figure out how to get to it.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, listen, these are hard problems, and especially when you are working within a larger silo like YouTube is, these are not easy problems. But I think that there is, I think you hit the nail on the head with the Yahoo thing.
By the way, Bill Burlingame, already writing in regards to the net neutrality discussion.
Wow, that was fast.
Says, I'm having a problem remembering all of the points. It'd be helpful if you would list those points in a newsletter. I might do that. I might write this up for next week's Patreon column. But in the meantime, all of the posts are there at dailytechnewsshow.com in the show notes. So you can check them out there. All right, folks. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening. You guys are the best in the world. I'm not even kidding when I say that. And
Best.
we cannot do this without you. So please come back tomorrow when Annie Gauss is here and Len Peralta will be here.
Ah.
Annie goes.
We'll see you then.